I think, there are pros and cons, certainly, but it definitely unleashes an ability to track them under to terrorist legislation, to prosecute them under legal, abilities that exist. And it opens up the door to allowing more ability, in the counterterrorism frameworks and the counterterrorism apparatus to deal with these organizations. There are, challenges to that as well. It doesn't get rid of the organization. It often doesn't deplete their member base that might exist online and in places where they can't necessarily be shown to be affiliates of the organization and therefore prosecuted on that basis. But it does definitely open up opportunity for governments to pursue them in a new way and an effective way in a lot of cases.
Mm. When you say you get additional legal avenues, why is there not sufficient at the moment to deal with them and prosecute them?
Yeah, so across the Five Eyes, especially since the 2019 Christchurch attack, then there has been increasing concern, obviously, among security services and intelligence services about the threat coming from far-right organizations and extreme far-right organizations. And there have been increased numbers of prescriptions and designations across the Five Eyes countries. But there is also a symbolism in prescription. It's the highest level of disendorsement that governments can give to organizations, and therefore it's guided by a lot of different factors. It can't just be violent organizations, but it has to be shown to have specific ties to that country's security challenges. It has to have a certain threat profile, and often it's been guided by the nature of the ideology, with so much of the focus being on Islamist extremism over the last 20 years, but certainly the increasing concern over far right organizations and the violence that they're capable of has put more attention on what needs to be done about prescribing these organizations and listing them as official terrorist threats.
Should organizations like the Proud Boys, which has been quite prominent in Australia, in the US and the UK, would that have been a group to target as well?
It's a tricky one. Certainly targeting them and prescribing them would be, prescribing them would make it easier to target them, with the sort of counterterrorism apparatus that exists. However, there is a threshold of violence often that needs to be met, it isn't always attributable. So in a review of what they can actually attribute to these groups, it is difficult sometimes to label the acts of violence, the sort of maybe protest violence or muggings that might happen under these groups, to actual terrorism. And that's the trick, is to be able to label them and to affiliate their violence with them, and in a way that makes it a body of evidence to support prescription.
Of course, not only are they racist, they are misogynistic. There's a lot of gender driving this discrimination. What do you think is causing it in 2021?
Yeah, so gender plays a very significant role across violent extremist organizations and ideologies, I think, but especially in the far right, you can see it's very apparent. Even the Proud Boys is an openly misogynist organization. There are organizations that label themselves as misogynist organizations, but even with the base, which is a white supremacist neo-Nazi, there are these undertones of misogynist narratives. There are very strict gender roles that they play, that they expect from their members, and that draws people in, as well as is an output of their sort of gender-based violence. And gender is definitely a very significant factor and needs to be part of the analysis of the harms that these groups can cause and why people join them and how to combat them.
Yeah. Do you think society in the last couple of years, particularly politics, has become so polarised? Has this fuelled these groups and made them attractive to people who feel that they're not being heard elsewhere?
Yeah, it's been a tricky couple of years. I think we've definitely seen, and not to say that it hasn't happened in the past, but we've definitely seen this sort of extreme polarization of society, of politics, of the civic conversation and the discourse that happens. And that, is driven by global events like the pandemic. There is increasing online activity. The internet provides an avenue for these conspiracy theories and narratives to cross borders and to reach parts of the population that you wouldn't normally associate with getting involved in these types of groups. And certainly there is a wider social problem happening that needs to be addressed by finding that middle ground again, where people can conduct a political and civic discourse in a space where you aren't espousing hate or encouraging hate or violence, but rather you can disagree with somebody and have that disagreement in a civil manner.
Jessica White, appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.